I have good news and bad news for home buyers here in California. Here's a bit of good news. There's approximately 36% more single family houses for sale compared to 1 year ago. So, depending on where you're looking to buy, you may see more options and therefore less competition amongst other home buyers. The other bit of good news is that home prices are no longer skyrocketing, and even though mortgage rates have increased as of late, rates are substantially lower from a year ago. However, the bad news is that even though home prices are slowing down, we're still not too far off the all-time record high that was set back in May this year. In today's California housing market update, I'm going to provide an update regarding home prices, housing inventory, home sales, price reductions, and much, much more. This is part one of my two-part video series I make each and every month for you guys, so stay tuned for part two, where I go over what's happening at the county-wide level, because of course, there are some very big differences, and of course, make sure you're subscribed. Thank you so much for doing that, and let's begin. I want to share a slideshow from the California Association of Realtors. I dwindled this down to the slides I thought were more interesting, and then the data that you guys should be aware of. And of course, I'll provide some very detailed analysis regarding home price changes, or trends, I should say, over the past several years, going back to 2010, how the trends we're seeing today compare to years past. So let's talk about sales. And by the way, this video is only looking at existing single family houses. So excluding brand new home construction, and of course, excluding multifamily units, also condos as well, except for I have one slide to share regarding that. Anyways, looking at existing home sales, that increased by 5.1% this September compared to September of 2023. I'll have October's numbers in about 2 or 3 weeks once they announce that from the California Association of Realtors. In regards to the statewide median sale price, this means that half of the houses that sold this September sold above this number and half sold below this number. It was 868,150. That's up by 2.9% year over year. But that gain of 2.9% is actually the smallest year-over-year gain since July of 2023. I have a lot more to share regarding some trends of home prices, which I'll share with you guys here in a little bit. Inventory numbers were at 3.6 months for a month supply, a big increase of up by about 29%. Days in markets at 24 days. This is basically a time frame when you list your home for sale until you accept an offer from a home buyer. That's 24 days, which is the median number. That's based on a closed home sale though. So this is basically a lag indicator, just like the median sale price. In any case, we're at 24 days right now. That is an increase of 33.3%. 1 year ago, we were at 18 days. So I would say a big percentage from a small number. In regards to home sales in California, it says sales in August. This is a typo. It should say September, of course. Sales in September slipped to the lowest levels in about 9 months. A decrease of 3.4% month over month, but an increase of 5.1% year over year. By the way, sales slipping to the lowest level in 9 months this September is very much noteworthy, given that average mortgage rates, according to Freddie Mac, fell to a 15-month low in August. And of course, closed home sales in September mostly has to do with what the market was like 1 month ago, back in August, when rates were at 6.5%, I believe, according to Freddie Mac, or 6.4%, according to Freddie Mac. That was a 15-month low. So even though rates fell to a 15-month low, sales decreased to a 9-month low. Therefore, as a note, a drop in rates did not improve sales, but seasonality has a role in this as well, because our housing market tends to kind of slow down starting in September each and every year. Something I found to be interesting looking at this chart below, going back to January 2005. I love how they share numbers looking back over the past 20 years. In any case, sales so far this year is basically been flat for quite some time. We're at around 253,000 units. That is the seasonally adjusted annualized figure. So the current sales pace this September, multiply that by 12, do a seasonal adjustment, you get 253,000. This is, looking at pre-COVID levels, this is very, very low. Looking at 2010 through approximately 2019, we should have around 400,000 sales, which is right here, around 400,000 sales, again, seasonally adjusted. and also annualized. But now this month, only 253,000. So sales remaining at very low levels, which basically started in the second half of 2022. Also, for the nation as a whole, we were short by approximately 1 million sales last year compared to the long run average going back to 1989. Let me repeat that. We have just over 4 million sales on a national level that happened in 2023, but the long run average is around 5 million. So we're missing about 1 million sales, or we did miss 1 million sales last year compared to the long run average. And this year, by the way, nationally speaking, we're actually going to be a little bit less than last year. So we're going to miss another million sales occurring in the United States compared to historical norms. Let's take a look at this as well, because what we're seeing as well, which is much different compared to the spring home buying season of several years ago, is that sales at the top end of the market, in other words, more expensive houses, are not increasing at the same rate we saw several years ago. So for example, sales for over $2 million this September compared to September of 2023 only increased by 8%. In the range of $1 million to just under $2 million, that barely squeaked out a gain, up by 2%. So sales in the luxury market, or more expensive houses, are barely squeaking out a gain, less than 10%, much different compared to the craziness we had back in 2021, for example. Also in this year, this September, around 33% of all home sales were for over $1 million in California. That is a little bit higher than last year at 32%. We definitely paid to live in this state, to say the least. Now, here's what I mean by the growth rate of multi-million dollar properties over $2 million. That increased over 300% back in the spring home buying season of 2021. So sales of multi-million dollar properties surged back then, and now they're barely squeaking out a gain. Again, look at this. Spring home buying season of 21 up by about 300%. Now we're only up by 8% year over year. I have been making videos in the past regarding the giant uptick in houses selling over $2 million. So therefore, the mix in sales back then, in my opinion, were impacting the overall median sold price. But now, because gains are, I'd say, kind of muted or tapered off, that is no longer in effect right now. This actually is a kind of new trend as well, because back in February, April, and also in May this year, we saw big increases of sales for over $2 million, which is the dark blue bars. So for example, February 2024, sales for over $2 million rose by over 50% year over year, as well as April this year as well. And again, this year, or this month, barely squeaked out a gain, up by less than 10%. In addition, the share of houses selling for over $1 million has now decreased for the fourth consecutive month. So in California this September, approximately 33% sold for over $1 million and only 23% sold for less than $500,000, which is 9-day difference compared to pre-COVID levels. Right before the onset of COVID, the share of houses selling for less than $500,000 was around 45%, and homes selling for over $1 million was only around 15%. Now it's double the share now at 33%. Now looking ahead, looking at a lead indicator of closed home sales in the next 1 to 2 months is pending home sales. In other words, you write an offer on a house, you get your offer accepted. That is a pending home sale, a home under contract. That increased by 7.4% this September compared to 12 months ago. So this implies that home sales, looks like it's kind of flat compared to the previous month, but this implies that sales will remain relatively strong once we have October's closed home sale numbers in about 3 weeks. And again, this is much different compared to the spring home buying season of 21 through the end of 2023, where pending home sales decreased year over year for that time frame. Okay, let's talk about home prices. I have a lot to share regarding home prices. I'm going to get nerdy. What I'm going to say, I have an Excel spreadsheet I want to share with you guys to share how the changes we're seeing this month, how that compares to years past. So beware of that. So anyways, California's median home price saw its smallest yearly gain since in about 14 months. So the year-over-year gain up by 2.9% is the smallest yearly gain in about 14 months. Prices also decreased by 2.3% compared to August as well. So now the median sold price is just over 868,000. Just comparing this to 2009 through 2011, wouldn't you love to have $1 million back then to buy houses? Back then, the median sold price in California was around $300,000. Now it's nearly 3 times that at just over 868,000. All right, let's get nerdy because I have a lot to share regarding home price changes in California over the past several years. So again, this is an Excel file I pulled from the California Association of Realtors website, which goes back to, when was this going back to? January of 1990, believe it or not. Anyways, I want to share how the trends we're seeing today compares to years past. So to start though, this September, home prices for closed home sales in September is mostly based on what the housing market was like back in August. And back in August, according to Freddie Mac, the average 30-year fixed rate was at 6.5%. That was the lowest level since May of 2023. However, rates have increased substantially this October, which could slow down home price growth, especially as we're entering the slowdown or the slower time of the year, which in general is in November, December, and January each and every year. Also at 868,000 regarding California's median sale price, that's the lowest level since March this year. It does sound like a lot, but it's normal to see the median sale price peak around August each and every year, and then start decreasing in September. Therefore, it's seasonal to see September prices fall to a multiple month low, historically speaking. So for example, take a look at this. 2016, home prices peaked in August. Then once we hit September, it was at 516,000, the lowest prices since July that year. 2017, we peaked at 565,000 in August. Once we hit September, it decreased to 555,000, the lowest level since July that year. In June, I'm only going to look at 18 and 19, and we'll move on here. But in 2018, prices peaked in June, and then once we hit September at 578,000, that was the lowest levels going back to March that year. And lastly, 2019, again, we peaked in August. Once we hit September at just under 606,000, that was the lowest level since April this year. So looking at this year, it is pretty normal to see that home prices are at the lowest level since approximately March this year. Now here's what's not normal though. Looking at the year-over-year change, up by 2.9%. 1 year ago, we were at $843,500. At that time, we were up by 3.2% compared to 2022. Now we're only up by 2.9%. So a little bit softer compared to last year's year-over-year change. Also at again this year, or this month I should say, this marks the 15th consecutive month in which home prices have increased compared to the previous year after 8 consecutive months of decreases, which actually was in November 2022 through June of 2023. And the peak, by the way, was back in April 2023 compared to 22, a giant decrease of 8.2%. Now we're seeing a gain up by 2.9%. However, as you guys all know, I do unbiased reporting regarding our housing market, and that includes the California housing market, even though I am an agent servicing the greater Sacramento area. The 2.9% increase is actually the smallest year-over-year gain since July of 2023. In other words, it's decelerating. My least favorite word, but it's kind of true and kind of fitting for what's actually happening right now. Up by 2.9%. Also, that is much lower than the long run average as well. Historically speaking, based on my nerdy Excel formula right there, the average September change compared to 12 months ago, going back to the year of 2010, is a giant increase up by 8%. Whereas this year, we saw a gain only up by 2.9%. So a lot lower compared to the long run average. In regards to the month-to-month change, home prices decreased by 2.3% compared to August. And by the way, whenever I'm saying home prices, I mean the median sale price, only based on closed home sales. Anyways, that decreased by 2.3% month over month, which is actually normal to see that because the long run average going back to the year of 2010, this is August through September, each and every year going back to the year of 2010, is a decrease of 2.1%. So in line with a long run average right now at 2.3%. But wait, there's more. I also want to share how this gain of 2.9% year over year, how does that compare to pre-COVID levels? So for example, home prices in September 2018 through September 2019 increased by 4.7%. 17 through 18, it rose by 4.1%. Then we saw a giant increase up by 7.5% from September 16 through September of 2017. So the gains we saw over the previous years right before COVID were much higher compared to what we're seeing right now, up by 2.9%. I'm guessing that's due to the kind of a combination of factors, elevated rates, but also elevated home prices as well, which is keeping, and also an increase of inventory as well, up by about 36%, which is keeping gains of home prices at relatively low levels. But not nearly as bad as what happened in 2009. Back then, home prices fell by a whopping 7.1%, quite a bit lower compared to the nearly 3% gain we're seeing this year. Also, going over the past 4 years, going back to September of 2020, we saw a giant increase up by 22% and up by a staggering 43% since September of 2019. So prices rose by 43% over the past 5 years. All right, moving on. Let's get back to Carr's slideshow here and talk about the average sale price to final list price ratio. That's at 100%, which means on average this September, and actually for quite some time, I believe about a year, homes on average have been selling for the seller's final list price at 100%. However, though, the share of houses selling over the seller's asking price did decrease to an 8-month low. So 38.4% of houses that did sell this September sold above the seller's final list price. But this also means that 62% sold at or below the seller's asking price. Also at 38% right now selling over asking. This is a little bit lower than last year at 45.5 and also way lower compared to the craziness of April of 2022. I have never seen a market like that. It was absolutely insane. Back then, 73% of houses that sold above the seller's asking price. Now it's only at 38%. Now, even though that share at 38% is lower than last year and the peak of 2022, we're still above levels looking at pre-COVID. So for example, January 2017 through the end of 2019, that share really didn't get past 40%. So the share right now at 38% is more or less on par with what we saw back in 17 and 2018. All right, changing gears slightly here to talk about inventory numbers here in California. I love this chart right here showing that your month supply going back to January of 2005. So right now, the month supply is at 3.6 months, a little bit higher compared to a year ago at 2.8 months. At 3.6 months, though, you can see how low this figure is, even though it has been increasing ever since the last half of 2021 in general. Look at 2007 and 2008. The month supply was in the range of 14 to 16 months. Now it's only at 3.6 months. For those of you who think we're going to see like a housing market crash, it's going to be worse than 2008, where is the supply going to come from? How will we go from a 3.6 month supply up to a 16 month supply? It did happen in 05 through 07, but that was really due to the fact that people were getting loans to buy houses that they shouldn't be qualified to do. They had many bad loan programs, ninja loans, where you can just state your income and the lender didn't even verify that you actually earned the money that you stated. You can get a 5-1 ARM. You would qualify based on the initial payment, et cetera, et cetera. It was very bad lending practices that happened in 05 and 06, which was the main reason why we had the crash that happened in '07 and '08, a massive amount of foreclosures because people couldn't afford to buy couldn't afford their mortgage payments. Now, much different. In any case, moving on, let's talk about inventory numbers right now, the year-over-year change. So again, we have approximately 36% more homes for sale today compared to 12 months ago. This also marks the 8th consecutive month of year-over-year gains, but it has flattened over the past 6 months, drastically unlike what happened in 2022. So right now you can see the growth rate of inventory has basically been flat for about 6 months, much different than 2022, where inventory was absolutely piling up, which caused home prices to decrease year over year, like I shared earlier in the video. Even though the growth rate of inventory has basically been stagnant for several months now, it is a big improvement compared to the depletion of inventory that we saw back in late 2019 through late 2021, where houses were being listed for sale. They get multiple offers within a few days and they get sold. Now we have a lot more options for home buyers out there, which of course is good news if you're looking to buy a house here. What's not good news though is that new listings are still lagging behind years past. So we did see a 16% gain of new supply in the market, or new listings, compared to 12 months ago at 21,901, which is a gain from the 18,872 we saw 1 year ago. But at 21,901, this is the lowest September reading, excluding last year, since at least September of 2018. Back then, there was just under 31,000 new listings. Now there's just under 22,000. Big picture, what this means for you if you're looking to buy a house in California is that because we're not seeing new listings basically surging, and we're still way below the past several years, this is limiting house inventory growth here in California. And very quickly, I want to share an example looking at inventory numbers, how that compares in California compared to Arizona, Florida, and Texas, for example. So on a national level, inventory levels right now are at least a at least a 4-year high, but still below 2019's levels, right? Nationally speaking, Arizona, much different. Arizona has more homes for sale than any other month going back to at least 2019. In Florida, also the same as well, they have more homes for sale than any other month going back to the same time frame in 2019. Same goes for Texas, but actually worse. Look at that, 117,000 homes for sale for the week ended October 25th. And this, by the way, is according to Altus Research. Back in early November 2019, only 92,000. So they have a glut of inventory in Florida and Texas. In contrast, look at California. 48,000 homes for sale, higher than last year, a little bit higher compared to 2022, but still lagging behind 2019. Back then, 57,432 houses for sale. Now there's just over 48,000. And this, my friends, is why home prices are decreasing in Florida and Texas overall, but not in California right now. And lastly, let's talk about the share of reduced price listings according to CAR. For the month of September, that's at 37.2%, which means that approximately 1/3 of all houses for sale this September reduced their asking price. That's at 37.2%. This is roughly on par with what we saw back in 2014 through 2017, but lower than what happened in 2022. Back then, the share went from about 20% to 45% in less than 1 year. This year, much different, starting the year at around 30%. Now it's up to 37%. And with that said, if you guys are looking to buy or sell a house in the greater Sacramento area, we'd love to help. Also, we cover the Bay Area as well. If you guys are looking to buy a house in the San Francisco Bay Area, please reach out. My email is jason@meetjasonwalter.com, or check out my website, which is realestateteamfinder.com. Hope you guys got a lot of value out of today's video. If you did, please hit the like button. Also, consider subscribing as well. I appreciate you guys so much for watching today's video, and we'll see you on the next one.